Welcome back to another episode with the legendary Keith Mitnik. Really grateful as always that you're doing this, Keith. This is amazing.
I'm always glad to do it.
These pearls of wisdom. I am super excited for this one. I want to hear your perspective. How does perspective play a role in assessing facts and presenting your case? What kind of perspective do you want attorneys to have in order to win?
The longer I do this, the more I realize perspective in some ways outweighs the facts. Facts are going to be the facts. And as a lawyer, you can't change a fact. Mm-hmm. But what can you change? What do you have control over? People's perspective. And the conclusions that are reached from the facts can be changed dramatically by changing someone's perspective. And it's as it becomes more and more crystallized in my mind, it's exciting to me because it's empowering. You realize I can make a big difference even though I have nothing to do with the facts. The die is cast on the facts before I showed up, so what am I going to do? Just be a good talker? No. Being a good talker is a dime a dozen. I want to make a difference. And I can make a difference in the outcome by becoming masterful at providing the right and fair perspective that leads to the right and fair conclusion from the same facts. And if I was clumsy about perspective, we lose. So I actually can make a difference in the outcome without changing a single fact. So what do I mean by that? I'll give you a simple example that got nothing to do with the lawsuit. Let's say lady can't find her purse. She goes to the management, says, I don't know if someone stole her or lost, can't find my purse. And she's walking around a grocery store, can't find her purse. And you got video surveillance from one perspective that shows the person, a man with her purse in her hand. And the sliding doors to the grocery store are right over here, and he's walking what looks like towards the doors, holding her purse. And what would you conclude from that eye in the sky camera view? This guy's a thief. Change to one of the other camera angles, and you realize he's not walking towards the doors that happen to be there. He's making a beeline to the customer service desk that also is lost and found. He's a good Samaritan, turning it in. It's the same path, the same purse, opposite conclusions, and you have a different camera angle for a different perspective.
You sound like a pastor or a rabbi right now.
It changes everything. So how's that affect the case? Let me use an example of a case that I handled not long ago. It involved a bus that hit a guy on a motorcycle, and he tore his knee up really bad, tore all the ligaments. And we got a multiple seven-figure, very significant verdict for it, and very fair verdict under the circumstances. Young kid tore his knee up, never going to be the same. What was the defense in the case? Well, they defended on everything, but what was one of the defenses that'll help make this point? It was early in the morning. It was still dark out. Our client turned a corner from a street onto the street that this collision occurred on. Turned the corner. And as he turned the corner, he acknowledges he could see this city bus sitting parked up in a parking lot off the road. So he saw it. That's a big part of their case. As he got closer, she pulls out, and he tries to veer he hits his brakes, tries to veer to avoid her because the brakes aren't, and he didn't have enough time. And he ends up, the bus plows into him. They collide. Now we have the injury. So what was the defense? Where's perspective come into it? There was actually a video inside of the bus looking back, and you can see the driver. And the driver looks his way, looks here, looks, and the driver's trying to get an out. But she got to cross over, and had been sitting there and then decided to go on a rest there. That was a brake stop for the driver. But there's traffic coming this way and got to turn left. So got to cross our lane of traffic and then turn left, and there's traffic coming this way. Our client is going to right past where the collision was, turn left himself into his place of work. He's on his way to work on his motorcycle. They've got video that shows, but once she starts moving forward, doesn't look back. She's here, and then there's this period going, waiting for someone to pass here, and then goes. But you can catch the end of where you see the motorcycle headlights. And they get an accident reconstruction. They recreate the whole thing. And they use stills and a video to recreate. And they show this bus is moved, this big old bus with some lights inside and things, moving out. And he admits, this was their big smoking gun. He admits when he turned the corner, he saw the bus sitting there. Not moving, but sitting there. Parked, actually. But they say, you had all the time in the world as that bus was moving out to see it and stop. And by the way, you didn't, rather than hit your front brake, you should have, you hit your rear brake. And if you'd hit your front brake like you should have, you had time to stop. So you just plowed into it because you weren't paying attention.
Wow, how do you get out of that?
So first of all, our expert admitted he should have hit his front brake, not his back. So we had to deal with that. But look, the kids responded to emergency. So now let's talk perspective. How do you change that? Because they put no fault on him, and they shouldn't have.
Who's they? The defense. They said
the jury put no fault on our client.
Uh-huh.
The defense was trying to put 100% on him, but at least.
Excuse me. Yes, that's.
Yeah. So what is the difference of the perspective in the case? You start explaining to the jury, hey, this is Monday morning quarterbacking. It's easy to say, look at this bus. But when you really looked at their recreation, you can't tell that bus is moving. First of all, he turns the corner. He's got a headlight on coming down the street with the right-of-way, and there's a bus stopped off the road in a parking lot. He's not thinking the bus is moving. It's sitting, parked. When it starts moving, it's creeping. And we know that from the inside camera. Just creeping. That's not perceivable to him as a threat. It's just a bus parked. By the time the bus moves out and is actually a hazard to him into his lane, he's right on top of it. So now let's go real time. They've taken frame by frame still shots, and it looks like, what are you doing? But that's not the way it happened. Let's do it real time. He's pulling up. He's got a bus stopped here is not a threat to him. It's drizzling rain. It's dark. There are cars coming this way, and he's got to turn left through the oncoming cars and worry about cars behind him not rear-ending him. So where's his focus? He's about to make a left turn. He's making sure he's got an opening here and making sure no one's dangerous behind him, and the bus is stopped over here. And no, was it really stopped? No. But you can't tell real time. The bus is inching. By the time it became clear that bus is pulling out, he's got a split second. And they're wanting to criticize his decision from an emergency they created under those circumstances where his attention is rightfully elsewhere, and say, well, you hit your brakes, but you didn't hit them the way we say you should have hit them. Because he thinks, wrongfully, if you hit the front brakes, he's going head over heels and losing control, so he's going to hit his back brake. Now, when you go bring an expert on a motorcycle in, that's not the choice. But he wasn't in a class answering an exam going, which is the right answer? He's trying to save his life.
He's responding to emergency, like you said.
So when you take the Monday morning quarterbacking, the slow motion replay still frames that have nothing to do with reality, and you looked at it the way it was playing out real time at full speed and the reality of where his attention is, what in the world did he do wrong? Because it's their burden to prove. They got to prove, they're claiming he's at fault. It's comparative fault. We don't have to prove anything. They got to prove, it isn't enough to prove he could have done something different. It isn't enough to prove someone else would have done something different. It's only enough to prove he did something wrong. He did something unreasonable under the circumstances. And when you put proper perspective on it, he did nothing wrong. But the bus didn't look back after it was time to look back, and not only pulled out, then acted like it was stopping and then accelerated further as he was trying to get around it. It's all their fault. And all of a sudden, all of their recreation, which was honestly scary, wasn't scary anymore. And the facts didn't change one drop. The only change was perspective. From an unfair, slow motion perspective to a real-time, fair perspective, and the jury got it right. That's all pure perspective.
You're a rock star.
So-
That you use the word and phrase positive perspective, I believe, when we started this.
Right.
So where do you infuse that? How does this was brilliant and genius, obviously, but I'm curious about the phraseology that you chose.
I use positive perspective for a couple of reasons. I like the alliteration, 2 P's. It sounds good. I also like it because it has more application than just lawsuits. Another way to say it that's not as catchy is fair perspective.
I see.
The right perspective. Proper perspective is the right way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
The other perspective is the wrong way to look at it. And it's only fair to do it that way.
Do you use this lexicon with the jury?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll say you can look at the same facts and reach wrong conclusion. There are two sides of this. Neither side's changing facts, folks. We're presenting you the same facts. We're presenting you two opposite conclusions. You've got a very heavy responsibility to get the right conclusion. What's more likely right than wrong under the law? How do we best serve you to do that responsibility? Because when you leave this courtroom, you're going to carry the outcome of this the rest of your life. You want to get it right. How do we serve you? I got a responsibility to my client. But I also, as an officer of this court, have a responsibility to shoot straight and to serve justice, which means there's one key element. It works like a decoder ring. It's proper perspective. How many folks have been to have their eyes examined? And what do they put those crazy machines up with all those dials? You can turn the dial to the left, everything's blurry. You can't see anything on the eye chart. Turn it a few clicks to the right, you can read all the lines. That's perspective. I'm just trying to turn the dials in the right direction, not the wrong direction, to have clarity, not confusion, not cloudiness. And so that's what we did.
You make such amazing analogies. They're so accessible, like that eye doctor thing. You like take me back there, and now I'm in the courtroom. Do you ever make jokes with the jury? Do you ever try and make some levity happen?
No, I do, but rarely, and only when it's just really fits. There are times things happen in a courtroom, and the best way to break the moment is say something kind of funny, and everybody laughs. But I'm not overly. Jury selection's a little different. Jury selection, it's a very hard process, and they're tired, and I'm working hard, and they're sitting in uncomfortable seats, and they've had enough of it. And if you can instill a little bit of laugh here and there, naturally, not forced, it buys you a little time, and it helps with a little rapport. But I consider the courtroom a somber, serious place, so I'm not a big jokester in the courtroom. You might ask some people try a case with me and say, he's entertaining, jurors laughing and stuff all the time, but I'm not.
You're not going for
cutting
that.
Up. I'm not cutting up. I consider it hollow ground. I consider it important business we're doing, and there's a sincerity to it that I don't want to diminish. In fact, I don't like when defense lawyers are big. Everything's yuck, 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 and they want to come over and be my friend and shake and laugh and whisper, and they do it on purpose, by the way. It's strategic. They want to see the jury seeing y'all both being real friendly, so this really isn't all that serious. And I'll tell them, look, I don't want to be a jerk. You don't do that in front of me and to the jury. Out in the hallway, don't care. Not in front of the jury.
Wow.
And they know I'm a nice guy, but I say I don't want to ham it up in front of the jury.
Wow.
But so the perspective matters. I'll give you a couple other just simple examples. Your client didn't go to the ER right away. And you go, oh my God, how could they be hurt? Well, let's have some proper perspective. Let's say it's a herniated disc case. Look, if your client shattered their leg and had blood spurting out of it, and they didn't go to the emergency room that day, I'd be worried they fell down the stairs at home, not in the car crash, because you'd have gone to the emergency room. It's life and death.
I see.
But you got a herniated disc. What's a herniated disc feel like? It's stiff. It aches. It hurts a little.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go to the emergency room. There's sick people there. It costs a lot of money. I'm going to be there for 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I got things to do.
Right.
So it's not that kind of an injury that demands an emergency room. Some people go to check it out to be sure, but it's not a life and death situation. What's the difference they didn't go to the emergency room right away? I mean, you think about that. That changes everything. Why did your client continue to work? Well, what would they be saying if he was laying around and quit work? My client bucked up, didn't give up. That's supposed to be respected, not used against them.
Love it.
Feel the change of perspective? Here's a big one. I call them badges of honesty. Your client admits that they did a 5K walk, and you're suing over a low back injury. They did a 5K walk as a charity event with their work.
I'm assuming this is from a real example.
Yeah. I actually asked her client on the stand, I say, and you're not never hid that, did you? You're the one told them about it, yes. And if you needed to, you could do another one. Dumb question. I didn't know the answer. I assumed she didn't do it. She goes, I did another one.
Oh, God.
I'm like, dumbass after all these years. But you know what I did with that in closing? I called it a badge of honesty. I said, I want you to count the number of times they cite to things my client said that absolutely no way in the world they know about but for my client. They're used saying my client saying how much better she felt. How in the world could they prove how my client felt other than my client say I felt better? They're suggesting my client's faking. She's the dumbest faker on the planet, if that's the case. Because their whole closing that's coming is going to be things she's told them voluntarily that they could have never, ever would have had but for her being so honest. Every one of those I want you to say to yourself, badge of honesty, badge of honesty, badge of honesty. And then ask yourself, by the way, that captures badge of honor. I didn't say badge of honor, I say badge of honesty. But
it's beautiful.
People hear
it's
it.
Beautiful.
And then I say, and then ask yourself, how are they going to square that person with a faker? What did I just do? The facts didn't change one drop. It's just a matter of perspective.
Very positive perspective.
It's a positive perspective that happens to be the proper, honest perspective. And now people can see their way to the right conclusion from the same facts, just like that person who could have been from one angle that looked like you don't see the information desk, which is lost and found. All you see is those doors opening and closing, and he looks like he's angling his way over there when he was making a straight path to turn the person. It changes everything. And it's not just in a courtroom. That positive perspective is a way to communicate in your life. Things make all the difference in the world, just like in the courtroom, when it's perspective. If you share with somebody an honest perspective that leads them to the conclusion that's the right conclusion, they're much more likely to get there. Someone's upset with, a spouse is upset with their husband. And the husband says, and you don't say, you're an idiot. That's not a good start. I understand why you're upset. I would be too. That takes people's guards down. See, and I am so sorry. But I can tell you what was going on in my head, and then you lay it out. Honestly, not some BS. Please don't take these things that I consider to be decent human things to do and turn them into a strategy to get out of trouble because when you were really being a bad guy. But I just want to tell you what's going on in my head and what was really going, what I was feeling and doing at the time. And all of a sudden, The person's listening because you respected why they were upset, because they have a reason to be. But they were seeing it from a perspective that wasn't a wacky perspective. It was just a different perspective. But it's leading to the conclusion you're up to no good when you really weren't. And when you say, let me tell you this, honestly. And hopefully the person goes, okay, I see what you're saying. And suddenly the temperature comes down because there's a fresh perspective, a proper perspective. So it works in life. But you got to first understand the other person's, you can't, if they're two different perspectives, one's reaching the wrong conclusion, one's reaching the right, you can't get to the right conclusion if you don't understand the perspective that's leading to the wrong one. Go back to the bus. I had to fully understand their perspective so I could take it apart. And it was a wrong perspective. I fully grasped theirs. Then I said, why are we right and why are they wrong? In spite of all those stills they took. And suddenly I go, it's perspective. They're looking at it from a slow motion. It didn't play out slow motion. In real time, he didn't do anything wrong. Did he do perfect? No. But we're not held to perfection in courtrooms. He's got to use reasonable care like they do. Did he violate reasonable care under the circumstances? By the time she pulls out in the rain and in the dark and he's trying to navigate to turn left and she'd been stopped. And don't forget, she pulled smack in his right away and didn't look, and after a while stopped looking. Jury got it. They wouldn't have gotten it had we not wrestled wrong perspective to right.
That's an excellent paradigm shift. Thank you. Amazing.
Yes, sir.